I don't believe you all recognize any of the writing, only that it's covered in runes. Um, no, that's where I'm wrong. It's covered in runes where you started to notice many of them are very similar in that they represent the 8 schools of magic. And it's kind of a way where almost like with Egyptian hieroglyphs, like we know when you see a certain amount of hieroglyphs like inside of a little box that that's a name, like that's the way they showed the name. Like these schools are all represented inside of kind of a circle, so you can see where these runes are and where they're specifically talking about schools, kind of thing, where you start to see abjuration, evocation, and like necromancy coming up over and over again, and you can extrapolate that these circles mean schools. You all noticed, I believe, at least 11 schools of magic referenced on that black obelisk. And again, I believe that's where we actually did stop there. Um, but I think we did name one of those other schools as chronomancy, or at least the understanding that that was the one school that kind of sticks out as kind of a clear, um, understood ninth, at least, school. I think the other ones would more or less be unknown, almost as if they were like those were the 3 like lost schools of magic um, that might exist here, but nowhere else. So you all are around this kind of northern edge of the map here, which is like northeast, top right. And as you're kind of looking around from this obelisk, you're already deeper in the ice. You can see around you a few of the schools that you've already kind of passed around, and you've explored the evocation one that's directly in front of you, and kind of tried some different methods of using your magic to manipulate things. Um, I did not actually keep in my notes. Um, yeah, you've got the inscription from the evocation school. Do either of you remember what that inscription said?
I I remember it was like it was the fifth it was a step. It was the fifth step. Shoot. 1 second. It had something to do with putting fire out with ice in hand. I don't remember
Gotcha.
exactly what it.
So you guys kind of understand that there's something referenced from evocation. It is both fifth. You need fire, ice, and hand. So there's certainly a certain understanding about what that is. You guys were blocked off by those shields underneath the actual tower and what seems like a way up into the tower. And that magic used those 8 symbols of the school, part of why you're kind of already familiar with at least those symbols across these buildings. So you guys are still scouting out the city, kind of looking around for these other schools. At this point, you have been able to locate, recognizing their schools. What is that? 4, 5 towers, I believe. You've got evocation, illusion, transmutation, abjugation, and enlightenment or enchantment. So you still need to find 3 more, and you have 2 other towers that you've seen in this place. One is kind of far off to the west where you all are. One is deep, kind of down towards the southeast. And the kind of big thing that sticks out of that one is that it's inside of a city and looks different from the other ones but it is still a tower that kind of sticks out as different. You've got one that you all were near when you were near the tubes, but you're kind of at a lack. Like, unless those are the last three, you're kind of looking around this place. Do you have any thoughts? Have either of you picked up anything like since last week that you had more questions about this black obelisk? Um, do you all want to go back to some of the towers that you've already been to, or are you looking to kind of continue still exploring the city?
Well, at this point, Ben will use his tried and trusty method of let's at least make one circuit, and then we can hit some of the specific spots again. Because I'm interested in this little forest patch that's by the tower as well, as that eyeball-looking thing to the north.
Gotcha. And maybe I could point out now as well, like while there's noticeable things around you, this is also one of those things where you can certainly expend time searching through like smaller buildings. By now exploring the city, you guys might understand that while there are some buildings of importance, some of the other buildings are certainly just the opportunity to spend like a half an hour searching around to see if there's anything that remains. So that is kind of one of those options that you all have. Uh, if you are passing from the obelisk towards those things, do you want to go like into what is kind of those six almost like petals that are the actual like oblong ovals? Do you want to pass through the oval of what is essentially kind of like the city? Or did you want to pass towards the spire and go back out? Or even, well, with that one in particular, you can't actually cut around the outside edges, as that part's like really crumbled. About a third of that oval of the city is kind of covered in ice where this place is crashed in.
Yeah, because it's hard to see the oval that's immediately to the west of where we're at because the spire is blocking to see whether there's
That's
any
part of why I
building.
wanted to mention basically like those ovals predominantly. At this point, you guys are should start to recognize that those ovals are effectively like where apartments are. Um, it's a different kind of thing that exists there. That's part of why I was kind of getting to the idea that you all probably have an understanding that like this area is more special than these areas. It's a weird way to say it, but effectively, because again, this was a society of magic users. These schools of magic and everything that kind of exists in those in betweens is a little bit more important than the other things. So that's why I say, like, that oval in the background, that's a question of do you want to explore places and spend time trying to find treasure?
Well, Valissa would definitely wants to try to explore to find some treasure, but just like Finn, she's also interested in that forest. But aside from the orb, when she first saw it, she did notice the forest, and that was one of the things she's been wanting to look at, but it hadn't brought up.
It's been enough of a voice of reason that Valixis can control herself? Or do you need to roll a die to see how uncontrollable you are?
Uh, Part of me admires her optimism, her eternal optimism. But yeah, I mean, I think based on what you're saying about the neighborhoods, we can explore those at leisure, unless there's like some building that stands out. Like obviously much better than the most, like the one did in the first neighborhood that we were at. I'd like to. I think we should go down to the middle and check out the little fortress looking thing.
I feel, I feel like
On the
Melissa's
way
gonna.
to the forest.
What were you thinking there, Felixis?
Yeah, I feel like she would be able to control herself so long as she got to do some exploring. With everything down here, if she were to just walk by and just try to head straight to one little area with everything between her and that location, she probably would dart off somewhere to try to find something, even if it was just rocks. So long as she can do some kind of exploring along the way, I feel like she'll have more control over herself. Otherwise, we better be rolling dice for her control.
Yeah, I think you guys have been here for probably like 4 or 5 hours already going through this place. On some level, we kind of covered already. Like last session was allowing it to be a little bit more chaotic where everything was interesting. Part of why I was giving you guys these clues is kind of to say, like, this is where you can actually appreciate that there is a difference. Same thing as kind of like recognizing the general pattern of what these spires look like as you encounter them. So I think it's perfectly fine to say, yeah, like, as long as everybody is putting a clear-cut goal in front of you, you're still kind of in through everything. You guys cut through the spires, kind of avoiding the actual like city area over there. You are going to come up to an area where there is massive amounts of rubble crashed across this actual like upper level where these schools tend to be, and it pretty well blocks your way towards that fortress that's kind of on that western side of the spire. From where you all are, you can see all of this rubble. You could spend some time exploring to figure out what that is. You could potentially bypass by it, and it's just going to test how close that force field is versus you trying to avoid the rubble and go straight towards that actual like fortress that looks like those upturned like rib cages. Or there's a little bit of a clear path, effectively kind of northwest, that would take you towards those like two little eyeballs that stick up. Um, I think in that other town district, you might see a few buildings that look a little bit more elaborate than the other ones. But inside of that actual town, there's not necessarily anything that's going to jump out at you as to this one needs to be explored. Most of those, like, again, like petals of the city, will be pretty bypassable because you've kind of seen the two that really have big things that leap out about it, which is basically where those tubes are marked, and then the tower. Most of the other places are pretty similar looking to each other, maybe even the museum. Um, but when you get up to all of this rubble, what do you guys think? Are you going to hold true, push to that building? Do you want to try to investigate what is here at your feet? Or would it change your mind to where you like divert back towards those eyeballs?
I want
Uh,
to
Vel-
investigate.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Fen wants to investigate. In between the petals, there's always been a tower, but in this one, it's rubble. So at least try to see if there's any markings or uh, information that would glean which tower it was, if it was.
Gotcha. So you get Velixis's attention to try to help you like focus on all of this rubble, basically enticing her with it being this is where you guys have found basically 4, if not the 5 towers already. You
Lots
should
of
be
shiny
seeing one here.
rocks.
So if I can have the two of you do perception checks for me. Rashad, I feel like you are still on GM Whisper. Yeah.
I am. What the heck?
Knock that off. So while you guys are starting to go through this area to look about, you're going to kind of take a few moments to like look around, and you start to see there's definitely a like smooth side to this stone, often to both sides of it, where you can see kind of an inside diameter and an outside diameter of very smooth stone. Despite a lot of this being shattered in very jagged ways, you can kind of see where this is indeed a very cylinder-like structure, fitting kind of the architecture that you've seen of these towers. And exploring deeper and closer, you can start to see that as you actually look at any individual piece of rubble, inside of this stone is just layers and layers of writhing hands that are just as if you're looking into, for us, like our smartphone, and it were just images of hands, like this smooth black stone has hands of like an ethereal blue that are just kind of grasping from within. This is very much kind of like the look of purgatory, where there's just hands dragging you down into hell. And anywhere you look, it always just seems to be kind of a focal point where the hands reach out a little bit further. I'd like each of you to roll a wisdom saving throw, please.
Well, that is creepy.
So you guys take a few moments looking through, and you like lose yourselves for moments. In this, I really like the idea that if you forget to focus on the fact that you are here now exploring these ruins, that it almost starts to pull you deeper into this like lost thought, where you might like look over Velixis and see Fen kind of staring into this piece of stone, and just from mentioning Fen's name, see that moment where Fen kind of like shakes their head and then looks over to you and is perfectly fine. You like throw the stone back down to the ground. But there's that moment where you can almost get lost being pulled into these hands. And as you all kind of go through this rubble with a little bit more hesitation, you start to see signs until wherever eventually you are able to notice the actual symbol, and that this is the tower of the School of Necromancy.
Upon noticing this, actually, hold on. Upon noticing this, Alexis actually gets a little excited, and she begins to actually shift through the rubble to see if they left, to see if she can find like any notes or anything that may have survived whatever happened to this tower. But essentially, she's looking for a spell to see if she can find a spell, scroll or book.
Roll an investigation check.
Seriously, 226s on the wisdom save, but then low as hell on the investigation.
As you start to dig into this stonework, and you're going just like looking for anything that seems a little bit more substantial, you're going to start to see more of these like reflections of the outer surfaces where these hands are, and your eyes start to mess with you at first. But you start to feel as if these hands are like animating from the stonework until, yeah, you definitely saw one there, and you like look back, and there's stones being like drug apart. And where you're digging, you're starting to notice that there's these little blue spectral hands that are starting to dig, and the more you dig in that spot, the more like opaque and kind of like white oozy blue green these things start to be, before, if you dig for a few minutes, these things are going to start to seem uh relatively like there's a hand beside you digging in the stone.
So shoot, relax. So I guess Alexis would be like, uh, and she would just look around at the hand helping to dig in the stone. She would kind of just stand up and kind of back away and see if it continues to dig in the stone while where she was digging at, or if it stopped along with her.
What do you think you're doing during all this, Fen? So while you start to step away and watch this, you're going to start to notice that for every stone that this hand kind of like picks up and throws away, every few moments you hear like another click of stones, and you start to notice like in a different place there's another hand starting to like writhe through the stonework, and then you hear some stones scattered. And after about another like 15 or so minutes, there's now like quite a few hands, maybe 6 or so, and they just seem to be digging through this rubble, slowly trying to make their way somewhere. After probably about a half hour, you might see that they're all kind of making their way towards kind of like a central location.
Well, before it got that far, uh, I was gonna say I had the wrong button pushed. I think Fen, seeing the hands at first, would have his curiosity satisfied as far as discovering what school of magic it was. Uh, when Velixis started to dig and started to notice the hands appear, I think he would hear Brennick's voice in his head and speak out to Felixus. Perhaps some caution is warranted. Sometimes you can't put the genie back into the bottle.
Uh, I'm kind of Felix will turn to Finn and say they're all headed towards one central area when while they're digging. What I want to head to the center of this little area real quick and see what's there. Are you okay with that, real quick?
I would just urge caution.
Yeah, little my apologies there, because if Don was pressing the wrong button, I just moved forward in case like you stepped away for a moment. So you might not have actually spent the time to see like a pattern in them. Uh, because Fen is reacting pretty much as soon as they came about. It's more or less this is developing over a longer period of time. So keep that in mind a little bit. That maybe he's trying to ask for a little bit more caution on this. But if you guys kind of resolve that, you have a thought. Are you helping? Are you just kind of sticking back cautiously? I'm not sure if Fen was explicitly saying to leave either, so.
No, like obviously, there seems to be something in there, but like my would just urge caution, and I think at that point continue to maybe assist a little.
Yeah, Velixis would definitely she would stick back a little bit, but she would now help to move the rubble, and she would head the same direction that the hands are heading, to see what it is that they were trying to dig towards or dig out.
So yeah, advising more caution from Fen, adding to actually assist in the long run. And as you all kind of like see that they're getting closer and closer to where you would expect the foundation to be, these hands are all kind of converging from all over, to where at least again after about a half hour or so, you're probably looking about like 8 to a dozen or so of these things. And it seems like the more that the two of you do stuff, the faster these hands are starting to almost come from the rubble. Let me have each of you roll a d12. So, as you kind of like assist in this, these hands are gonna get like there's awkward moments where you're like doing something and like a hand is almost trying to assist you. And at times you definitely almost have like moments where almost like with a little dog where like you reach a little bit too close or move a little bit too quick and you see like a little snap from these hands, but over time, they seem to all kind of be assisting in the same task. And eventually, you all are actually going to come to a point where you're pulling apart rubble and you're just going to see a skeletal hand actually like reaching out of the rubble. Maybe like 6 or so of the phalanges, like 2 of the fingers are almost completely destroyed, but there's still like a little bit of the original bone there where you can see like this hand kind of got crushed in those stones. And it's gonna kind of, they're gonna keep excavating where you can kind of see once this hand is free, you can kind of see what these hands have been digging towards.
Perhaps this is the rest of Erlathos.
It might be. I mean, it was just ahead. I'm curious. Maybe he was actually looking for his. I mean, he might want his body. I mean, he may want his souls, or maybe we're mistaken. Maybe he just wanted his body. Valixis is going to check and see if the whole of the body is there and not just the arm and hands.
If you guys continue to assist in the excavation, you will eventually find that there is more and more of a corpse the deeper that you go. After probably about like another 15 or 20 minutes of this happening, I think Ben has the highest passive perception. Probably gonna start to notice that there's like just a little wisp of like smoke and distortion above you. Before you kind of like notice almost like this like hot air mist in the cold air isn't dissipating, and you start to notice this little bit of a distortion is actually kind of the form of a human. And you're going to see that there is indeed kind of a ethereal figure almost like floating above this body. Uh, Over the next few minutes, it just kind of stares down towards where you guys are uncovering this corpse.
Because someone has taken an interest into our endeavor, Alexis.
What do you mean taking an interest in our endeavor? Who?
And will point or cast his eyes towards the ethereal shape that's floating above.
Valixis would look up, and upon seeing the shape, uh, would she recognize? Have any? Would she recognize the person at all? Like, would he resemble? Like, if he had his face, would he resemble anyone that has been mentioned before?
Roll a history check. Fen, you can roll that as well if you'd like. I would say you can tell that you're looking up at a pretty classic wizard looking human. Uh, Basically, you're looking at somebody not wearing armor, not adorned with weapons. They have kind of like a long staff, almost created out of the spine of some sort of creature. But overall, this is a very kind of classic looking wizard. And that's probably about all you're going to take away from seeing that spirit.
Maybe this is his body. Should we finish digging it out? He may possess the body again, and if that's the case, um, he might be able to give us some more information as to what happened here.
Very well. I hope this creature is thankful.
So, as you all kind of continue your little excavation here, all of these like gaunt, greenish blue, like corpse like hands pulling away these stones, you're getting closer and closer to where you start to see like the actual full body of this figure. almost completely disfigured as they've been smashed by this tower. Very many signs of kind of their imminent death in a very surprising manner, and eventually coming to kind of this base of this area. You're going to notice that they were indeed kind of like trapped underneath a portion of this tower above them. One of the pieces that you will uncover is a piece of stone written in Larose. Don't believe any of you can read it, and you've been cast in comprehend languages. Assuming you take the 10 minutes to cast that to read this. And that also includes, like, since Brennick can cast it as a ritual, like, it's assuming you guys, like, wait for Brennick to cast this so you can read it.
Yeah, Valixis would cast comprehend languages. I think she has that prepared. Actually, let me check.
If you've got it, you can cast it as a ritual. If you have it prepared, you can cast it immediately. So let me know what you're doing there.
She does have it prepared. I'm gonna go ahead and cast it.
So when you cast comprehend languages and you start to read this stone, you're going to see the stone says, "Seventh, trace a circle with the ashes of the dead." And as you kind of read this and like translate it off to Fen, you're going to see as the spirit above kind of recognizing you actually reading Larose is going to start to speak to you. Again, this sounds very elvish, and it sounds very almost painful because it is like a blend of dwarvish and elvish, two very ancient, like the ancient words with very like clumsy, the ancient smooth words of elvish with the very like clumsy like grammatical of dwarvish because it's kind of in a different lens. So it almost hurts for Fen to kind of like hear these words. You'd have a minor understanding, so it's perfectly fine if Alexis is still translating these. But basically, this creature is going to name itself as uh, High Necromancer Cadavrix and insist that you inter its bones in a little bit more like traditional of a um, grave. Basically, if you guys would actually create like a stone grave for its bones.
I translate this to Fed and because and then I let him and I let Fred know what he said. I think it would be courteous to actually bury him if he's asked. I know I would want someone to bury me if they found my body in a normal grave. Would you be okay taking the time to do that?
If it would give this creature spirit rest, of course.
So I translate back to the spirit that we will happily bury his bones for him in a traditional grave. I then ask, is there any particular area in the city that you would want us to bury you, to put your grave?
There's like a forlorn look on this creature's face as it seems to kind of look off across the city for the first time as you guys are kind of like finishing the last bits of uncovering its body. For the first time, it kind of looks up from where its body is, and as it scans across the city, I think all its response will be is I would be free to be at rest wherever you deem for us. And you can kind of see, while this thing's looking across, it's much more like this is a horrific point in its existence, and it is bound pretty much to its bones being there. So just kind of looking around, you guys could easily move to kind of like a clearing off a little bit closer to evocation and making a stone grave there. You could move closer to the location of those like teeth of that fortress that you were looking to check out. You could potentially go into this actual housing district, into kind of like the central, um, like central area where it's kind of open. There's a lot of places where you could go where there's still stone. You could take it to the ice and you could bury it in ice. There's a lot of options, but it's basically kind of this recognition like it's being tortured by being where it died.
Okay, so I suggest we move his body, further from this little section where he died. Uh, Maybe towards where the Tower of Evocation um would be better. At least he'd be near another tower that is still standing, as opposed to near that fortress, which kind of does look like it might still resemble kind of a prison. So definitely say we move his body towards the Evocation Tower and bury him outside of it. And
It's very dry, as you see the spirit kind of like spit. Nothing flies out on the word of evocation. It's just gonna say to you, if you insist.
oh no. If that is an area that is not good for you.
I'm just fucking with you.
Oh, okay. I'm like, if you don't want
I
to be
can
buried,
only imagine that it is a great disrespect to a Netherese wizard to be buried inside of the sanctum of like one of the other schools. But at the same time, this is purely just like me. I think this is a more interesting way than how it's written in the book. Because basically, caring enough to bury this thing, but you don't have to go into the bury cycle.
okay. Well, I mean, yeah. Either way, though, we'll bury him. Uh, Shoot, let's bury him in the little town right here in the center where it's nice and clear. Um, the town still seems to be a bit intact in this little area,
And
and
we'll say, if it's ever me, I'd want you to bury me in the forest if possible.
yeah, but he said stone.
My overall point again was just this thing needs taken somewhere else. If you inter it in the ground, if you inter it under stone, if you inter it in ice, that was kind of my overall point. This thing needs removed from the place where it died.
Let's take it to the trees while we're investigating it.
All right, trees it is.
He was buried in stone. Let's give him some dirt for a change.
Let me have the two of you roll perception checks, and then can I have each of you roll a D100, please? talking inside of where I wasn't voice to talking. While you all are going through this corpse, I don't actually know how long ago I've been talking into the nether. You find a few other items inside of this area, or like underneath the actual body and in the nearby stones while you're going through things. Most of the clothing is already disintegrated and kind of gone from this corpse, but you do see signs of kind of like silken fabric that still covers part of it in tatters. A lot of this figure seems to be almost entirely bone, but is very desiccated, like effectively mummified human. And you will find a necklace with um, 3 beads. All of them are kind of little, like red, almost kind of orange in the center. And if you look close at them and kind of focus your attention for a few moments, you can almost see is this like yellow orange center is just kind of writhing. That is being worn by the actual corpse, but can easily be pulled off over top. Beneath it, there is a kind of like silverish yellow, very fine string net that's kind of like sitting in the stonework. And then the actual creature beside, or the actual bones beside its head, there is a small gem encrusted just like band of metal that's just in kind of almost like a horseshoe shape, that sits kind of right beside its head.
Velitas would turn towards the actual astral creature and ask it if it was okay if we remove the items from its body before just going to take it.
Roll a persuasion.
That is funny.
Is you kind of like ask for permission to remove these objects. You're going to just kind of like seize. The creature doesn't seem to be paying attention to you. And at some point, you're just kind of like going over this, and you're not entirely sure. Like, does it not understand you? Is it saying no? Saying yes? I would say on that one, Felixis is probably thinking, I could probably just take everything. It didn't say no. Ben, this would be one of those times that if you're even paying attention to Felixis in the least bit, you're welcome to insight check what you think the spirit's thinking. So as you all gather everything, are you kind of like setting all of the bones into like a wrap so you can kind of hold them together? Are you taking these items? Are you leaving them behind? Really, only the actual necklace with the 3 beads is currently on the body.
Is that well the other items I was want to guess she would take with the exception of the necklace that's on the body, the other items she would probably put into her backpack. Um and she would leave the necklace on his body since it's still on his body, and she would wrap his body in cloth to keep his bones and everything together before they headed off towards the forest.
Well, the grove, anyways. I don't know if it's a forest.
And so once we reach the forest, do you think should we bet him like in the center of the forest or closer towards the edge, the outside?
We'll pick a spot under the nicest tree.
Very well.
So while you all are heading over with your little package in hand, you are going to find as this creature is indeed kind of like still sort of floating with its bones, more or less following you all as you kind of walk its bones across this place. Um, you'll kind of pass close to this area where those massive spikes out of the ground kind of like shield this one spot. You'll pass by another tower where I believe on that one you can see the sign of. I know, I can find. Um, damn it, I have it. On. Why can't I think of the fucking magic? It's out of focus. Oh, I can't open up that picture anymore. Um, why can't I think of the school of magic that is conjugation? There we go. So you'll pass by the school of conjugation, and then you'll pass by another kind of like four prongs, like keep almost on your way towards this like grove of trees along the southwestern border. As you all head into that area, you're going to see all of these trees are still with leaf. They're all like very golden. It is a smaller little forest here, but all of the branches are kind of swaying together as if there's a soft wind through this place. And there's really not much to speak of for wind. Um, y'all just kind of like walking in and starting to explore for a spot.
Yeah, I think Fen is going to be cognizant of the fact that there may be perhaps another dryad occupying this forest. So we'll kind of be on the lookout for which way the wind's blowing, any kind of, and I guess
So with that, let me actually stop you there. So when you step into this area and you actually kind of like step down into the forest, one, it will be extremely comforting for you to get foot on earth again. I'm not sure if we've ever even discussed whether Fen would prefer to wear shoes or not, but this is going to be one of those moments where even inside of wearing shoes, it feels really good to be kind of like stepping on like the actual earth. And that's something that the entire time you would have been in Icewind Dale, it's ice and stone. There's never anything soft underneath your feet. And this would be one of those moments where you're like stepping into soft, loamy, very rich soil. But that's going to be a very quick, fleeting thought as you smell all of these wonderful scents around you. As you step into this area, you're going to hear a crack of thunder, and you're going to see up above you as there's like a massive torrential rain cloud coming overhead. And with this crack of thunder and lightning, you see this flash of lightning strike down into this area, and very quickly recognize that you are standing outside looking at a normal sky that is having a normal thunder and lightning storm. And a split second ago, you were inside of this ice, who knows how many 100 feet below the surface, in a place that could legitimately have a storm like this, maybe. But there's definitely a little bit of magic at play as you kind of like step into this moment and first kind of cross that like first little bit of the threshold.
And is there like a great tree in the grove? Like one tree that's obviously older than the other ones.
As you kind of look around, let me have you do a perception check. It doesn't take you long to spot that towards the center of this grove, there is indeed a single tree that kind of sprouts almost twice as tall as all of the rest. And itself probably rises a good like 50 or 60 feet above the floor of Ythryn. And kind of as you, I feel like that sounds way too short. Let's say 50 or 60 feet above the other trees, and it's about like 150 feet. I think that sounds a little more tree-like. Um, and yeah, you can kind of like pass deeper and deeper, but you can start to see like a lot of these trees uh almost make like those road forest looks, where kind of as you pass through this place, that tree is always within view inside of the grove. Sometimes other parts of the grove are blocked off by like these walls of planted and very meticulously grown trees, but that one in the center that stands overhead all of the others is always visible, unless like your face is right behind the tree.
I think that's the spot, Felixus. What do you think?
It's a nice tall tree. It'll definitely be a nice place to rest.
And I'm sorry, is it still pouring down thunder and lightning in the center?
Yeah, this whole place is going through like a thunder and lightning storm right now. So when you guys get closer to this area, when you actually walk up to the tree, let me have the two of you roll perceptions. Fen, you can have advantage with this. Or maybe even investigation. So maybe walking up and expecting to see some living creature here. In this place, as you get to this central creature, first off, it's massive. The footprint of this tree is probably about like 10 to 15 feet on the surface of the ground, and you could only imagine that perhaps its roots span this entire area, if not further. But as you're kind of like looking around, you can eventually spot that there's a particular angle that you can see the entire spire of Ythryn through the rows of the trees. And as you kind of like almost keep Ythryn behind you, or rather the spire of Ythryn behind you, you can see this area where there's a very like grizzled, aged face in kind of the bark of this tree. And you can see that there's kind of like the visage of an old man within this tree. Currently sleeping, currently not paying attention, currently just a hallucination. It's hard to tell, but if you expected this tree to be conscious, you're looking at its face right now.
So I think at this point, Fen will actually take off his boots, put his feet into some soil for a change.
It feels warm. It's a kind of warmth you have not felt in this place. And it belies knowing that you're in an ice cavern.
And he will bow to the tree and say, "O great Father, we have come to inter the bones of a man who has been trapped and his wishes were to be buried elsewhere in the city. I could think of no finer place. I hope you will allow him to find the peace that he has long sought." And then look for a likely place next to the tree and start digging the hole.
Roll a D100 for me. When you kind of like say this to the tree, you're not going to get any particular like response from the tree itself. You can perhaps like having a hand down to the earth, you can feel that this area, this place is still alive. This forest like teems with life, and you can kind of sense that around you. But you're not getting a particular response from the tree. You're also not getting like anything negative, like feeling that it's dead or anything. But it is kind of like almost a very neutral kind of feeling as you say this to the tree. What is going to happen is you'll hear again, very kind of broken, but you basically understand LaRose. You can effectively understand as you hear this spirit for the second time kind of reacting to things out and around it. It's just going to, another. Perhaps you'll be desiring this return. Let me have each of you roll perception checks here. So, Velixis, you'll kind of notice that the actual like staff of this creature, like the spine that it's holding, almost seems to be a little bit beyond simply being a staff. Fen, you're going to notice that as this creature kind of like pulls out its staff and is going to like take this spine and almost like dismember it with like a quick wave of its hands, you're going to see is there's just a kind of like tiny little shard of bark at the center of this spinal cord. And as this creature kind of like moves forward towards the tree, it's saying, "Ah, Nether Oak, perhaps you'll be desiring this return." And it kind of pulls this little like splinter away, and still a spirit kind of reaches in and is going to kind of return with its hand free, no longer holding the spark. It's just kind of this creature, a little bit more itself in spirit form. No response from the tree at all. Otherwise, you guys can commence that actual burial. And when you finish burying the corpse, the spirit above is going to disappear. It's just going to kind of fade out in a pretty similar way to where it was looking across the city of Ythryn. That will be among kind of the first signs of like joy, as once again it can look up from its body, and as it looks across the Ythryn with a smile across its face. It's a lot like that first sunrise for any of the people or yourselves over Icewind Dale.
After burying the man, Felix was just saying, tell him I hope you rest well, great mage, uh, and hopefully you enjoy your afterlife. And after that, she would kind of proceed to head from the forest, head away from the forest, and to investigate to investigate other parts of the forest a little bit more.
How about for Fen? Are you quick to depart this area as Velixis just like wanders around the forest?
Before she starts to head off, I'm gonna call out to her and say, "Hold on, please, Alexis," and I am going to jump in the great tree, and we've only really seen things from the ground level. I'm gonna shimmy up as far as I can and try to get a gander from a bird's eye view uh, of the area that's to the north of us. And for the sake of climbing a tree again.
So you can make an Arcana check for me. This can be an advantage. Solid. You can see that the tower, like directly above in this map, northwest, has a school of magic on it. So you can identify that as, I believe that gives you all seven of the towers. No, wait. Bam, that's all 8 of the towers. You've started with 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. And now you've got necromancy. You can see that that was conjugation, and you can see that this one is another of the towers. I don't think it means anything to Fen. You could point it out to Velixis and find out that it means divination. But from that perspective, you have a solid view that there's a building that was right next to the Tower of Divination, very similar construction as all of these schools, and then that there's one other building over near those eyes that has similar construction but is different. I don't know, what else are you really looking for?
I wasn't really looking for anything, just to do it. So then
Gotcha.
he'll get a
Yeah,
bird's eye
so
view, take a look at the land, and then come back down and put his boots back on.
yeah, just for the joy of getting to climb the tree. You're climbing in inclement weather too, and it feels nice to have. This is like chill winds instead of arctically my skin's going to freeze off and I'm going to die winds. It's very much you can sense that this is a magical climate kind of inside of this place, and it's really relaxing to have that opportunity to kind of climb high and look about and get a little bit more of a solid view of this city about you.
Got to get my hug a tree quotient in.
So you all have um, bits of information in front of you. What kind of thoughts, where are you still at this moment about what you would like to do?
Then we'll turn to Velixis and, well, lady, where you want to go, I will follow.
Melissa's kind of like, this or not. But since we know the location of all the towers now, we could probably check each tower and see what step it may have, because if there are 8 towers, I assume there's 8 steps. Um, and we could probably explore some other things along the way. I definitely want to check the 2 domes that were there. So let's head to the Divination Tower and see what step is there. And then we can head over to the 2 domes, or 2 glass looking domes, or eye looking domes that we saw.
Okay, so we'll head out for the Divination Tower.
Gotcha. So as you all head over towards that tower, you can see that part of the actual like stonemasonry in the top of that tower is missing. Um, you might be able to notice that there's some sort of object just kind of within the roof inside of that area, but otherwise can't quite really place what it is. When you get closer to this tower, all of the stone from this tower, in a very similar way as the necromancy, seems to almost be staring at you. It feels eerie to walk close to this place. It's that feeling of being watched by a predator that you cannot see, that haunts everything. And as you kind of walk up to this place, eventually you're going to notice that there seems to be kind of a large eye at the top of this tower that seems to be focused towards the sky.
And how tall do you say the tower is?
I think all of these are about 60 feet.
And you said there was an opening in the upper part of the spire?
Yeah, at the top of it.
Do I?
If there's an opening at the top, we might. If we can't, we could try scaling to get in that way. Otherwise, I say we check the lower part of it first to see if there's an entrance down here. If not, then I suggest we scale it to get to the top and get inside.
Yeah, so I think we'll circle the tower and see what we can see, including the investigating the rubble on the eastern side to see if that was another tower or similar structure.
So wait, which are you going to though? Are you going to the rubble, or are you investigating the base of the Tower of Divination?
Right. Circle around the base of the to
All right. So with a quick little like scout around the base, you all can at least see some signs that this is indeed a second tower. This place is not by and large missing like enough mass to be that other amount of rubble there. Um, the base of this tower seems probably relatively similar to some of the rest, where there's kind of like an open area that seems to be these sort of entryways. This one maybe curls a little bit like a nautilus shell, and you can kind of see like a section of stonework is kind of like blasted out of this outside entryway. Um, Looking around it, um, there doesn't seem to be too much else to this other than again like kind of that eerie sense of like this stone looks at you. And you just kind of have that feeling with you. Uh, but you kind of have the choice of you could either enter in through this way or kind of like crawl back up to the top, or you could simply go check out that other rubble pile. Any thoughts on what you guys are doing?
well, I guess we're gonna go examine the rubble.
Yeah, we can. I was thinking about it too. I was like, tower rubble, but definitely we can examine. I say I agree to examine the rubble to see if it's another tower or at least another part of the tower.
So, as you kind of. Oh, this is so weird. As you kind of like start going around this area of the rubble, um, I think that rubble is supposed to be the Necromancy Tower. You're going to find that there's actually like a large section of the city that is just an open, gaping kind of chasm that would seem to go down into the city below. And as far as you can kind of see with light from above, anything that's given off from the Mythaler, anything that's kind of like from you all, like holding a torch or anything, it just extends into a dark black nothingness. And there's like 5 benches around this area. psych out on my part because I think that's supposed to be the Necromancy Tower. All of that rubble seems to be from elsewhere.
So I think Melissa would be able to tell that it is part of the Necromancy Tower, if that's the case, and she would inform Finn of this. Yeah, this is part of the Necromancy Tower. Must have been a very large tower. Uh, so do you want to continue checking this, or should we go ahead and check the Divination Tower?
I thought the entranceway to the towers were barred.
One of them wasn't. I mean, there has to be some sort of way inside. Um, I mean, that hole at the top probably. If we can't get into the bottom, we can always try the top.
When you say that you thought the entryways to the tower were barred, what do you mean?
I thought there, or is it that we just didn't end up trying to go into any of them?
Right now, the only two places that you guys have gone that you've basically been kept out of have been these tubes and then the actual base of the spire itself. All of the schools, I just don't think you've actually tried because, like, Evocation had a circular stairway that just led upward, which I think you guys actually eventually did try because I think that, like, first story, once you got up above the ground, was where you found the inscription.
I had that misremembered then. Yeah, let's just we can continue our exploration. Let's go back to the Divination Tower and see if we can find an entranceway. Or technically, we would have found it already if we scouted it out.
Gotcha. So heading up and into this area, you all are going to kind of like encircle the actual tower itself. While you are walking through this tower, um, a lot of kind of like uh, ice kind of hangs from the roof above. You can see that the ice of this cavern is kind of like gotten in through this crack in the roof. And walking into what becomes the first kind of open air like large central spike of this tower, you're kind of looking up well above you to this hole, and you kind of sit inside of this room with a massive bar that kind of like rises a few feet above the ground and encircles the center of this room. And it's kind of like mounted to the actual ground in this room every like what is it, 180 degrees, so say like every 60 degrees or every so often, like this bar is like held up from the ground, and the floor of this place is just covered in ice, snow, as well as what seems to be like perfectly clear ice or glass.
But let's just would investigate the room to see if there's any markings in this room as in this room as well. Um, like any markings on any of the bars or on the ceiling.
Roll a perception. So it takes you a while to find anything of kind of note in this area. But you are eventually going to come across a similar kind of like paneling that you've spotted in some of the other, or I guess really in evocation and now necromancy, like similar kind of style of stonework. And you're going to see kind of the section in the stone of this kind of like placard almost that you're almost expecting of it is missing. That this whole like section of the tower seems to have been like kind of like shattered, and that part of the wall where you expect this placard to be is basically like taken away. Um, the like other parts of the placard, kind of like around it, say like the border that tells you what this is, says in what you can eventually translate. Would you like to cast comprehend languages, or would you like to translate it as a ritual after spending 10 minutes?
Um, Actually, before she does that, upon noticing the little placard that's kind of missing, she takes out the little ice, the square ice that she had, and she checks to see if it actually fits in that spot.
No, I'm talking like a 2x4, like a 2 foot by 4 foot section of wall, like the school like entrance, versus that's like a piece of a cube.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would make more sense. Okay, so yeah, she is going to spend 10 minutes to cast it as a ritual this time.
Gotcha. Hanging out for this time here, Fen. Let me have you roll a d6, Felixus.
Yep.
Yeah, while you spend the time to cast this, at some point, Fen, you are going to hear the Larosian language kind of being used, and gives you the idea like just outside of the tower, somebody seems to be speaking. You could like move back or down to the base and take a look, or you could find a crack in kind of the side slash roof of this place to take a bit of a look as well.
I'll try the floor that I'm at first, and if I can't see any, well, what do I see when I move to the crack?
Gotcha. Roll a perception there. From where you can like see on this level, you can't actually get a look of anything, but you can still hear the voices. Effectively, at this point, you're going to have to go down to the lower level.
Yeah, so while Felixis is doing her thing, I'll do that.
Gotcha. Are you just going forward with it, trying to be stealthy?
Yeah, I will try to be stealthy.
Gotcha. I'm gonna roll it for you. +8.
Correct.
Yeah. So as you kind of like creep down and around this area, you very slowly kind of move around the edge, and after a few moments, the voices are a little bit louder, perhaps inside of the orchard, and you're gonna be able to creep out a little bit more, and you start to see the fleshy humanoid bodies of these like single-eyed creatures, and seems a little weird. You've not heard them speak at all before, but you've kind of like, you still hear this language, and then it's starting to kind of connect the dots with you that you have heard this voice. And as you're able to maybe sneak up behind some of the rubble to the southeast of you, or I guess it's more east, you can kind of gain a sight of two of these creatures following this skull that floats in the air. You can't see anything about the skull kind of from behind it where you're looking. Do you have any interest in investigating further, or would you kind of return to the tower and back to Velixis?
I'm just gonna stay put and see if I can see where they're going.
Gotcha. At present, they seem to have kind of like moved by, and they are now like moving into this forest. But they are effectively moving away from you at present.
Then I'll go back into the tower.
Gotcha. So, taking like having a pretty solid idea, you've seen all three of these wizards you're hanging out with cast comprehend languages at some point here. You can kind of recognize how long it takes them to cast the 10-minute spell, and you kind of have a solid understanding. And you kind of walk up basically in time to hear what Velixis has to say. Velixis, once you finish casting, you are going to again be able to translate that it says, "Ask and we shall find." And that might help you clue in that some of the symbols you are seeing around here are actually symbols for the god Severus, who is the god of divination.
I would explain that to Finn, and then I would say, so what should we? It says ask and we shall find. So
I'm sorry, I described this poorly. My apologies. I feel like there is a big shattered crystal ball that's like been destroyed in the center of this place. Um, Instead of saying that you're seeing the actual symbol of Severus, there is a part of this stone plinth where it's like broken off from the rest of it that you can see that there is the symbol of Severus is a bunch of eyes kind of floating inside of a disc, and you can see them moving around in the stone. This is kind of like the source of that eerie feeling of the eyes around you are moving. And that's where you see, like the translation says, ask and you shall receive, or and we shall find.
so upon noticing this, Valixis will, after translating it to Finn, Valixis would kind of look around, and she would. I feel like she would walk over to the eyes and say something just to test it out. She would say, "Find notebook, a notebook," just to see what would happen.
You're just walking over there and saying, find the notebook. Um, but that's all. Not touching it, just standing in front of it.
Yeah, she wouldn't touch it immediately. She kind of just walked over to it and just said, "Find notebook."
Gotcha. So you walk over, you see the eyes, and they're kind of like whirling around. And they focus in on you for a moment. And then they start to kind of like go back to just like more or less erratic little whirling movements.
So after that, Buckus would actually place her hand on it, and she would kind of just look at it and investigate it a little bit just to see, and she'll repeat her request to find notes, find notebook.
So, as you place your hands on this and you say, find notes, you are. You are going to have a vision of your kind of schooling and maybe like the place in your cave or the place in your home where you did the most of your studying while you were still practicing your first cantrip, trying to really gain these like levels of your first few spells, to really start to use your magic for the first time. And you're basically going to have this like extremely vivid view of this moment and all of this time that you spent in this spot studying magic. And very focused in all of this is simply going to be all of your notes. And you're kind of seeing this like archetypical notebook as the focus of your vision. I need you to make a Constitution saving throw, please, sir. This vision is going to come to a very quick end, as I need you to roll a D anything. Odd is right, even is left. As this vision comes to a conclusion, you are going to feel a horrific pain as your left eye is plucked out of your body. It is going to sink into the stonework, and for a moment you will see your own eye looking back at you. And Fen, you are seeing as your friend's eye is like gouged out with magic. Blood is going to start flowing from Velixis's left eye. And you are going to take 9. I don't even know what kind of damage that is. Tearing? It's got to be slashing damage or piercing. I don't even know. But you're going to take 9 damages. Your eye is plucked out of your head.
So, Ben, seeing this, is going to be horrified and rush over, try to apply first aid.
Yeah, like you guys can do regular kind of healing things. You could staunch the bleeding. You can definitely do some things if you guys want to eventually try to heal this. But in the long run, this is something where like that was kind of a moment where you all will recognize this might be the cost of having a very direct connection with this god.
So upon realizing how it works, I think Alexis would be able to tell that she had, now that she has only one eye, she may be able to ask once more, ask them a question, ask the god a question once more. Um, she does actually sit and think about this for a minute, and she does also explains what happened to Finn, and yeah.
So I think Rashad, considering doing this again, it's a perfect time for us to take a break here. So let's come back 10 minutes after the hour. Take at least 15 minutes here. If everybody comes back before then, we'll get back in before then. But at very least, let's give this a 15-minute break and come back shortly here. He says, now that I know, I can play one more time.
I'm thinking long and hard about the question that I want because I'm like, if I'm going to sacrifice an eye, and at least it's, and the reason why Valixis is okay with this because it's her. It's not someone else being sacrificed. So it's kind of just an eye for her. So it's like, shoot.
Think if you were blind and cast True Seeing, you could see. So at least as a wizard, there's potentials.
Right, and I thought about that too, because with me being a cleric, at some point I should get strong enough to, I guess, heal my eyes so I can get my eyes back.
Do you think so?
Maybe, I don't know. A god just took my eye as payment, so I may or may not. Depends on the, I guess, on the situation and how that god is feeling. Like, I don't know. Is he gonna feel cheated? What's gonna happen to the eye that's in there? These are questions for a later time when I get to that bridge.
So what was that? That was inside of the Divination Tower. Rashad just basically went to like a portion of it where it was the Shrine of Savras. Touching her hand to the shrine has given up a left eye for a really, really good view of an old notebook.
Yes. So upon realizing what the cost is, and Felicia's thinking about all the knowledge that's everything she's learned here in this place, she goes to place her hands on it again, and this time she says, "Find nearest necromancy spell book."
All right, let's start off here with a Constitution saving throw, because that will give us at least a taste of the end results. This may take me some time in the long run. Makes me regret not asking you what you were thinking before the break. That would have been a wise decision.
Honestly, I knew it was going to be something along those lines, but I had to think about which one I wanted.
So start getting used to Felixis being blind, because regardless of what this vision is, your right eye is getting plucked out of your head.
That is hilarious that it was the other eye.
My apologies for looking for this right now. Again, I really should have asked you. I am pretty sure I'm about to simply give you the answer that I believe, because I also believe I already warned you about this. I warned you at some point, you are not going to just find spell books from Netheril wizards, because that magic doesn't exist in D&D anymore. And I just want to confirm it before I tell you so, but I don't think there's any Necromancer spell books anywhere remotely near you.
Okay, yeah, that part actually did slip my mind. But I mean, as it was done, done. And she asked her question.
So I think the solution is that Valixis, you said the nearest necromantic spellbook. So effectively, this is just um, a teaser for a possible adventure that we may never play. You may be able to convince everybody that you do want to play this. But effectively, you're going to see a spellbook. You'll have incredibly intricate view of its immediate location, as if you were basically sitting right beside it. For what it is worth, everything around the desk and kind of study area is going to be almost as if the focus is entirely on the spellbook itself. So, like, your ability to focus around on the desk is really difficult to try to notice, like, is the quill really nice? Do I have any sense? There's not going to be like that kind of sense of like the quality of this thing. This is just going to be an open-ended kind of thought. The last vision of Valixis, because this is going to be the last time, besides like thinking about things, that you will really see things, unless something else puts that kind of hallucinogen there. But yeah, you can basically have one day, perhaps we'll play SpellQuest, Valixis going after this Necromancy spellbook. I'll check in the downtime. I am 99% sure that there is no spellbook of Necromancy magic inside of Ythryn. And again, a lot of that is by design. They try to get away from the super powerful magic. Because the other thing to do is you guys are right next to a library, and it's going to send you to the library, and that's a really terrible way to lose your eyeballs, to find out that you're right next to a lot of like beginner, your first cantrip books, and like your first chill touch is like a children's book that you get a vision of. Because I feel like that's the other thing, because that tower right next to you is a library. And that's the other thing that I think would happen.
That would have been, honestly, that would have been both hilarious and messed up. It would have been hilariously messed up, and I feel like Valixis would have been like, I was too lazy to just check the library.
And I think that's kind of what you're going to come to. But yeah, again, like, I think for what it is worth, you can have kind of a blank quest of coming after this spellbook. But nothing about your actual vision of it is necessarily going to make you terribly more sure of what you're looking at here. This is almost the type of thing where you need to like go on quests to find people who can expand that vision for you. Um, but again, that's something we may or may not play ever, but we'll kind of leave it as that kind of gray area there. Fen, you just watched as Valixis, without pretty much a hitch, has taken a moment to not lose one, but now lose two of her eyeballs.
I'll never understand the minds of the wizards.
That'll also be another 11 points of damage from the actual tearing time. You will not see as that eyeball kind of like moves over and into the stonework and then kind of like fades into it, stares at you for one last moment before it disappears into the otherwise bobbling eyes that just fill this like little central point there. I think you've got your kind of sidekick there, besides the fact that you are going to be blind and disadvantaged on anything that requires sight. You are going to need to take a close look at a lot of your spells. Anything you need to see, you won't be able to cast until you kind of solve that issue. Oops, I didn't mean to do that.
Melissa would definitely turn to Finn after she said, "I will never understand the minds of wizards," and she would know, yeah, we're greedy for knowledge. Sometimes we can control it, sometimes we can't. Sometimes we just don't care what the sacrifice is. And then she would whisper, "But at least I didn't trap someone else's soul inside of me."
To solve a lot of other issues, you can otherwise basically kind of like order Galeria forward a little bit. And basically, for now on, like wherever you are supposed to be present inside of a marching order, you can kind of have Galeria as just a little forward of you. And more or less, you are kind of like following on her coattails.
Yeah, that's what I thought about. I was like, I might just hold on to someone's half full time being until she could figure out better how to move around or whatnot. Um, she was going to either just hold on to somebody's side of the cloak or just have Galeria just carry her. Since she's a kobold. She's essentially tiny, and Galeria is a giant ass hobgoblin, so she could pretty much either probably ride on the back of Galeria on her shoulder. Now, as far as the attacking spells and everything when the time comes, definitely gonna need to work that out.
Let me have you roll a wisdom saving throw, please. So, as you lose sight of that spell book, uh, for the next good bit of time, it is going to be more and more clear to you that no matter where you physically walk, there is almost an imprint in your brain as if you are still seeing, and you see ice as far as the eye can see. Your head is just above the ice, so you can move your neck and you can move your eyes from side to side. But like your view is that same feeling as those nightmares you've been feeling, where you are frozen in the ice, and your view for now on is going to effectively be that until I tell you otherwise. While you no longer have eyes, Felixis is not necessarily going to be blind. You are going to be tortured by this view of ever present ice everywhere you look. But you are effectively blind still.
Got it. So she would turn towards she thinks Finn is and say, "Well, I don't think I can lead us anywhere right now. Uh, where should we head to?"
Okay, well, didn't want to. As we were passing by, obviously you said the one building is a library. We check that out.
Yeah, I was saying like it's kind of a hard way to describe because of the toughness of that question. So assuming that yeah, you guys do understand that that's a library, you can certainly go there. When you all head inside, you're going to see plenty of shelves of books and kind of scrolls, a lot of like codexes kind of around places. Um, in many ways, the rooms are all kind of triangular. That place, all of those spires kind of like lean towards each other, and you can kind of see that the interior is kind of that same like triangles and cones. So it makes for very tall rooms. Let's see. Kind of moving in, looking around, you'd see a lot of stuff looks pretty rough for the wear, but it's still very clearly are like still um vaguely book shaped. Across the ground, everywhere you look, though, there's signs of like papers in different levels of decay that are like strewn about the ground. Some of them shredded almost as if they were confetti. Some things like belying like signs where they're like partially burned. But there's a lot of random paper around this place as well. Probably about half the books still remain on the shelves. And moving inside, you would hear a little bit of commotion. Let me get some perception checks from both of you, please. Ever after Felix's perception checks have to be with both dice roll. So you can hear there are two creatures talking inside of this place. Um, no, my bad. There's a single creature talking, but you can hear that it's holding a conversation, albeit a one-sided conversation. Um, Ben can vaguely understand the words, same idea. This is somebody who's searching for a particular object. They're describing basically an actual book, not necessarily like a subject so much as a very particular thing. Um, Talking about it vaguely, almost like a lot of like, have you found it? Keep searching. It's all that matters. Destroy the rest. Kind of things like that, where it's very much like singular focus on some it. Uh, what are your kind of thoughts as you all walk into that first scene? You don't see those creatures immediately around you. They're just like close by somewhere behind a shelf somewhere, kind of thing.
I'm thinking that sounds like Erlithos and his whatever those things are.
With that perception, you could tell that it's definitely a different creature. This thing is um, not necessarily like an old kind of like slow speaker, despite being confused. This thing almost seems like a little bit quicker. It's trying to search quickly. No, that doesn't matter. You need to find. We're looking for this particular book. So like it's got a much quicker voice. You can pretty quickly see um, where like the old skull might be like wise and hesitant to do things quickly. Whatever this is you've encountered is like in a rush.
Slightly more manic, I see. Um, poke my head around the corner, see what I can see.
When you look around the corner to kind of spot this thing, you're going to kind of look around and you see this quadruped canine-like creature that has that long, elongated snout. Very similar, perhaps, to kind of like the silhouette of something like a kobold, where it's almost like lizard. This thing is furred like a mammal still, a little bit taller, almost 3 or 4 feet tall, or 4 or 5 feet tall. But only like 6 inches, 8 inches taller than like a kobold. And seems to still stand in a very like odd way, as if it's not a humanoid, something that's a little bit more properly like stood on its hind legs. This thing still sits like almost like it wants to go back to those 4 paws. And this creature seems to be talking to a tall little like pyramid of a creature that seems to be kind of standing next to it, until it eventually comes into some like floating lights are kind of like bobbling around this room still. And a little bit of light kind of like crosses over him, and you can kind of see this creature is like black and white, a little bit more white on its front, with a little like yellow oranges kind of beak, and it has big long yellow eyebrows, and you can see it seems to be some sort of like flippered creature. Its butt almost sits on the ground, and you can see its little like fin like legs just kind of like waddle there, and it just seems to be like following this canine creature. Arms out, it's got books like in these like flipper like hands, trying to hold them as if you're carrying firewood, and every once in a while like a book or a piece of a scroll will fall from its arms. But this canine is just like tossing things to this black and white creature following it. Do you have any interest in like encountering them? Do you want to move away?
Yeah, I'll turn the corner and call out. Shout greetings.
My apologies. What did you call out?
Just a hail of greeting. Well met.
Make a dexterity saving throw. All right, so as soon as you kind of like make a peep, you're going to hear kind of a shriek from this canine creature. As you hear this shriek, you're going to notice a font of yellow, bright light kind of form right next to where you are, and kind of leaping out of the way. You can dodge all of the damage of a fireball at this point when you are successful. This room is going to erupt in fire, and a bunch of these like bookshelves and books are going to start burning. As that happens, you're going to hear oh, shit, no, the books, it's gonna be in there. Oh, no. So you kind of have this experience where you are dodging an explosion. The room around you is on fire, but you also kind of hear like an immediate, almost like scream of regret as this thing seems to gain its composure. Do you want to take this into combat? Would you like to defeat this thing, or do you want to try to talk to it here?
Upon hearing this explosion, it's probably more than likely smelling the burning books. But this was the ad spin. Is everything okay? What was that explosion, and why is everything on smell like it's burning? Finn?
And again, well, I'm not going to take it to confrontation.
So
Look,
upon hearing like its sense of regret, you're going to try to kind of like move along that line.
yeah, I mean, I guess try to put out the fire.
Gotcha. So like you're putting out different parts in areas that are catching on fire, and like would you say something like I'm not here to hurt you? Like is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, again, I mean, usually if you have a halo greeting, there's a inferred. This is how we do it in the civilized world.
I gotcha. So yeah, I mean, among the first things that you're gonna pick up is this is definitely somebody who thinks they're in a city where nothing is alive. Among the first things that you'll probably hear is basically something to the effect of, "Have you found books of keeping? Do you see them? Do you have them? Nothing lives here. Where are you? Are you here? Have you found them? The books of keeping. What is it? Do you have one?"
We are just travelers who have come upon this magnificent city, and we don't know of the book that you speak of.
Well, will ask, what is this book of keeping?
You're gonna find that this thing is not going to be kind of like elucidative in what it's looking for. It refers to it more often than not as a it, like in reference to it, rather than naming it. It will occasionally reference them as books of keeping, but it's going to kind of like initially twist to Velixis simply to beg like that same question along the lines of, "Do you have it? Tell me. If you have it, I need it. Give it to me." But you're basically going to find this creature is certainly difficult to speak of or speak to. It's not hearing you unless it understands that you have it, and you can see that it's almost like a bloodthirsty like animal as like it starts to like hear conversations go that way. Once you don't have it, you don't even exist. And that's kind of where this conversation goes. So when you try to get information from it, it's next to useless. Like Don said, this is like a manic creature. The world is whatever these books of keeping are. And when you look around this library, it seems like this creature has been in this place for a long time, destroying this place, searching for these books, and found apparently nothing.
Felix will try to whisper low enough to try to make him only think and hear her. Maybe we should find these books. I don't know what's going on, but this guy does not sound like he is in the right mind.
Unfortunately, he's not giving us any information that we could use to possibly do that. If we come across these books, maybe we could do something. If not, I suggest we move on before this whole place catches on fire.
Assuming you were putting them out, you can get everything pretty much put out where it's not like in danger. But while you guys are like having this discussion, this creature's already kind of walking past you, moving into another spot, going through other books, throwing them at this tall little black and white creature. Eventually, this thing's going to like dropping a bunch of books from its hands. You're gonna see as it passes a little note to. Oh, I gotta see. Let me have the two of you roll a D100. All right, it's gonna pass a little note to Fen, and it's just like this big flippers like moving this note towards you while the canine starts to walk away, and it just says "Help me." And then it's gonna waddle off after this creature as it keeps like throwing books over its shoulders, like at the creature, like at the black and white one, at the penguin. And eventually like it like starts to catch the books again when it gets back into place, but just loses more books.
I guess at that point, Fen will walk up to the creature and with a sideways glance at the penguin flapper guy, like, how can we help you?
Um, yeah, the canine's gonna kind of like spin on you. Um, Probably like spin around and say, "Don't bother my help. Kingston, my bad. Kingsport's busy, busy, busy. I have to find the books. Kingsport's busy. Kingsport, come." I'm just gonna see as this thing waddles away from you, following the canine.
Doesn't appear we can make any headway with that. Unless Veluxus has any other questions about the books that she'll never be able to read. Um, I'm sure Brannick might want to spend some time here in the future, but for now, I'm going to suggest moving on to the next building closer to the main spire.
Yeah, 100% looking around that place. You pretty much understand. Velixis can spend the rest of her life listening to Brennick read about some really wonderful things. Um, in the long run, that is basically anyone's life work.
The listeners would agree, yeah. We should probably move on to the next building. I mean, it's not like I could take anyone else's eyes. And she just kind of proceeds and just walks forward. She has no idea where she's walking.
Again, you can have your sidekick lead you around.
Oh wait, that's right.
Guys,
She's on his shoulder. She's sitting on Galeria's shoulder. I forgot about that.
when you guys get out of here, do you want to investigate into one of these side places? Are you sticking with checking out these towers? You never found the message in the Divination Tower. That one is missing, but that's what you found basically was a chunk of wall was missing. What other kind of thoughts do you all have?
We could go to the either the Conjugation Tower or there's that fortress-looking thing that's next to it. I don't think Fen will be able to read anything in the towers to make it worthwhile, but I don't know.
The interesting thing, which I believe comprehend languages is they can actually touch language and know what it says. So comprehend languages is a really good way for a book nerd to be blind. But you also guys technically have Brennick with you. So if you want to check out conjugation and stick to the towers, you all can head in that area, head in that direction.
With comprehend languages, it says you also understand any written language that you see, but must be touching the surface on which the words are written.
I think that's one of those things where effectively for Velixis to gain a lot of more favorable interpretations, that's like 100% where you kind of retire somebody from a campaign for a while to get over something like that.
She's like,
Because I could see just allowing her to effectively learn a different version of that spell where she can cast it simply by feeling it, effectively Braille. And comprehend languages would allow her to understand all such languages. But it's one of those things where I think it makes more sense to actually have to earn it, kind of thing.
yeah, she might have to start trying to learn other ways to read without. I mean, at the same time, though, well, at the same time, it says understand what there been any literal meaning of any spoken language that you hear as well. She could, even though no one else may understand what they're reading, if she casts it and someone else reads it, she should still be able to understand what's been said. So I guess effectively, Galeria could still read the books to her, and she can understand what it's saying.
Yeah, and that would be kind of the same type of thing as where Fen understands the two languages that Netheril like came from. He doesn't necessarily get all of the intricacies, because the languages he knows are their roots rather than them. But there's definitely like ways around things, and that's where, yeah, having somebody to help you definitely matters. As you all get closer to the Tower of Conjugation, you are going to see that this tower seems engraved in many kind of concentric rings. All of them seem to kind of have their own unique patterns to them. You'd have to get a much closer look to really distinguish to see. But like everywhere around that tower, you kind of hear a continual, almost like wishing of a broom across kind of like a stone floor. Just like those soft kind of scrapings of twigs against the like hard, rough surface. Or maybe like a hard, like high grit, high friction, or low friction, high like sandpaper, really fine sandpaper. You approach the tower and start to go underneath. Its central area is kind of like blocked off by like these rings rising up around this pillar, and then it has like an arm that kind of comes out, and underneath that arm you can see that these rings kind of like open up into a little central area, and inside of it there's just a bunch of just like floating little baubles in the air. They're just little like circular bubbles that are just kind of floating, all of them glowing kind of like a soft bluish green. So you move like a little bit more fully into that room where you can kind of see these little bubbles like floating above. You can see that all of the sides of this circular room seem to have a hand almost in each cardinal direction. And you can see these like spectral hands about like 10 or so feet wide seem to just be kind of like palm out, fingers a little bit lower than the palm, and they seem to all four be kind of like focused, and all of these little baubles are almost floating above these hands.
So after Gloria explains what everything that they're seeing to Velixis, Velixis will ask, is there any writing, is there any writing like in the other towers, like a step anywhere written down? Also, she would ask if there's anything around like notes that they could read to see, so they could see what all that may give a clue as to anything else that's been going on here.
Roll a perception for me, Ben. Actually, I think that's where we'll send it to Glaria to do a roll a d20 for me, Rashad. So, as you all look around this room, the inside of this tower, it's covered in these like rings and all of their symbols. None of them seem to be anything remotely like the dwarvish runes of the language of these people. As you kind of look around for any sign of anything that tells you there's something written in this place, you notice that there's a tiny little object uh, floating in between these four hands, about 15 or so feet off of the ground, about 5 or 10 feet away from any given one of these hands. And when you look close enough to see it's like a cylinder, you can kind of move closer and you can start to kind of see that its odd shape is actually kind of the shape of one of these spires of the Netheril. And then you notice that it has that weird, like, offshooting kind of, effectively, this is like a backwards H kind of shape of this tower. And then you'll realize that this is a miniature of that tower. Um, there's that little tower, and then this room of these just like floating little baubles of light, and these four hands that hold them up above.
Felix would have Gloria hand her the little miniature tower that's floating in the middle of the room so that she can.
Hold on. You gotta do smaller actions when you ask to do something. The moment Galeria walks into this room, those four hands are all going to fly towards you all, and you guys are going to be under attack. Let me have each of you roll initiative. I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be a disadvantage for you right now, Rashad. Alrighty. So, three of these are going to smack into you all. So actually towards each of your sidekicks. And both of them are heavily armored creatures. Yeah, I think it's just gonna go for 2-on-4 would be 2 on Galeria. And then 1 on what is it? Dorian's not yours. What's yours named, Fen? I don't know why I don't have your sidekick.
I don't think I actually ever officially picked one.
Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Actually, yeah, now that I think about it, I don't think you ever told him to make one at all, actually.
I feel like Don must not ever actually be. Oh, I feel like Don tends to be the person who like gets busy and has to do other. I don't even know why. That's just an odd little side thing. Have you ever thought about a backup character for yourself, Don? It's kind of like a generic, like if you were to have Fen die, like at the start of a session, who you would move to play next.
Well, I remember it coming up before, and you sending me the. It was it wasn't hirelings and henchlings. It was whatever system it was based off of. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, MCD's strongholds and followers, they're retainers.
Right, followers or trainers. That's what it was. But I don't think I actually picked one. Just pick a generic one for me. You know, it doesn't matter. I'm martial class.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, for now we could just use the basic fighter. Um, it's essentially tough as nails, and in the long run, it's better for you to pick, but it works as a solid sidekick. And a character who starts as a fighter can make it pretty well as an adventurer, regardless of where you take them afterwards. So yeah, what did I say? 2 of these are gonna go towards Galeria, and then the other one will go towards Fens afterwards. Oops, I rolled too many there. Again, both of those I know are high armor class characters, so they will not be hit by these. No, I lied. I got a +10. Which definitely means I need to give you. No, the stat blocks are simple because it's based on your level. So 10 to hit. They do 4d8, so DC 25. Yeah, I don't think you guys can save from these. I think they're each going to actually take a wound from those hits. So 21 hits a cleric, 19 would hit as well, and then the 19 would hit a fighter. Yeah, so basically Galeria is down 2 wounds, and you can obviously name your sidekick, but whoever your kind of sidekick is, they would also be down 1 wound. I think more than anything, because of the isolation on this one, we've really been leaning into forcing that it has to be the group versus using the sidekicks. I just prefer the sidekicks for a lot of stuff. So you guys have these blue spectral hands kind of spinning on you. They kind of fly out in like an instant of movement and like grab out and start to crush onto your friends. So I think, yeah, they just kind of punch you out of the way. And we'll actually go to Fen. What's your kind of thought as these things kind of like snap into action the moment somebody kind of moved into the room?
I know a guard dog when I see one. I'm gonna take a step back out of the room.
Gotcha. You're gonna holler for the others to like step away.
Yeah, I mean, I assume we're all standing in a bunch, and I'll raise my hands and start backing out.
Velixis, what would you like to do? Slash, what would Galeria be doing at present? Are you there, Velixis? Can you hear me?
Oh, I am. I am. I have to think about it for a moment. So upon getting attacked, I feel like Galeria would, Felix would have Galeria to back away from the area and explain where the nearest creature is, so she could cast a fireball at it.
All right, you said fire bolt. You can roll that at disadvantage. Yeah, so I think you would find Galeria just kind of instructing you how that like missed to the side, that you were aiming maybe a little bit more to this direction. Anything else from Galeria? Is she leaving that area? Is she going to try to attack one of these hands that's essentially like crushing her?
No, she is going to try and remove it from her, though, like try to pull it off.
It's not really grappling you that it's attached to it. So, do you want to do a grapple check and try to basically shove it to throw it out of the way?
Yes.
You can make a strength athletics check. So she can grab onto one of these things, and this is a really weird feeling of kind of reaching into something that feels lighter than air, and yet it feels like something. It feels like she can grip onto something, but you're not really sure what you're gripping into, nor that you're actually touching anything at all. And she can kind of hurl it to the side. I believe you can shove it 10 feet, and she can like throw it away from her.
All right, all right. After that, that'll pretty much be all she does.
So I think one more was flying towards you all. This one as well is gonna go for, I think that's still Galeria. Trying to smash in an 11 is definitely a fail. And it would go, oh, at that point it's all for it. Whoops. So Fen is first. So 2 of these are against Galeria and then against Fen. All 3 of those should hit. Galeria would lose 2 more wounds. She should be down 4 wounds. Fen, you are getting hit by this as it kind of like flies up to you from across this room, as you're kind of clearing away from that area. It's going to bash into you and push you back 5 feet as well. It's going to do 25 force damage to you. So maybe assuming that's where it crosses the threshold, and you're still kind of at this weird little impasse. These things are definitely hostile, but your thought is also maybe it's just guarding this place. What's Fen doing?
Yeah, so I'm thinking everybody out, and I'm gonna retreat.
Running away, just hauling ass. So you're like gonna take the dodge or dash action. Would you take the dodge action to try to ensure that you can get away safely? Or are you gonna be tricky? Um, are you just moving a little bit away and like kind of like holding your action in case it attacks you to respond?
Yeah, I'm gonna dodge and take my movement, which is 50. So I don't. Nobody's gonna be out walking me. Let's say dash.
Gotcha. So we can confirm your understanding here. At least at present, the hand doesn't seem to strike you as you move away from it any further. It seems like you're able to move away, and you can finish that movement. You can have your sidekick follow in a pretty similar fashion, and it would go to Velixis. What are you thinking there?
She is actually going to, presuming that then allowed to let her know that she feels like it's a good idea to leave. Melissa is going to agree and have Gloria to back out of the room, taking the same dodge action.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think Don like said it twice basically for each turn. So pretty much Fen is like yelling like, "Run away! Run away! Run away!" Pretty clear idea to kind of step away from these. But yeah, you guys are going to see as you clear away from this room, once you all leave the Tower of Conjuration, these things seem to move back into the center of that room. Their palms kind of return to this like upward position. The room otherwise from the outside seems to be the same.
Things have formidable magic.
So you understand that this tower seems to be guarded by these conjured magical constructs in the form of these gigantic ethereal hands. You all can continue to scout some of the other places. You don't necessarily know what the challenge of necromancy was. You do remember that you had to accomplish something in evocation. I think that was the proper use of um, like how you guys were playing with the fire. I think you figured out that you were playing with the fire. But you on some level at least know something about what conjuration has in front of you. Uh, do you guys want to press back into conjuration? Do you have thoughts of checking out the others?
Evolutions would actually suggest that for the time being, that they check some of the other towers or one of the other towers to see if they can get the information that they need. We would have to come back here eventually, but for now, it might be best to just check the other towers.
You all turn away from the conjuration tower and start to head back towards abjuration to the south. Otherwise, like it's been a while. I don't know if you guys remember, those eye-shaped things are still up there to the north. If you wanted to investigate further, but if you continue with the towers, when you all like head a little bit south of where you come out of conjuration from, um, you're going to see that there's 6 little creatures, all of those little eye stalk creatures. They're kind of like walking in almost a triangle, just like from near you towards that central spire. They're maybe like passing through a little bit of the city near where like those tubes come from. And they're kind of walking like almost in like a closer, like ever descending parallel angle from you. Let me see if I can draw this real quick. They're kind of walking that direction. When you guys head out of the tower, you're like kind of seeing them there. But you see 6 more of these creatures. Seems to be one that's kind of leading. All of the rest, almost like 2 of them stand like over each shoulder, and then 3 stand in like the back row to make up this little group of 6 who's like walking like a little arrow. As they kind of walk, they seem to be almost like making noises. Can't really pick it up from a distance. You can move closer to them to try to figure out.
Yeah, I'd like to move closer / try to follow him.
Alexis would agree. She would have to learn to move closer and to keep a little bit of a distance, but move close enough to where she could hear anything that was said.
Velixis, what is your stealth modifier?
+3.
How far back do you think you all want to follow them? If you're maybe 70 feet behind them and you can kind of just hear that it sounds like conversation, are you going to stick to like getting right up to like how dangerously do you think you're going for this, like trying to understand them?
More or less just trying to keep tabs to see where they're going, like tailing them, not necessarily.
I got that from you, but I think Velixis is trying to understand them.
Oh, well,
But no, I appreciate that. That's exactly what I was looking for. So you might find like Fen, you're like sitting back and watching them walk in this direction, kind of waiting for like any moment they should be walking into that force field that keeps you from going in there. So Velixis, if you can't hear them at 70 feet, are you going for 50?
Yeah, if she's not able to hear at 70, she's definitely going to moves closer to try and get to try and understand them a little better.
Are you going until you can understand them?
Effectively, she's going to go until probably about she's 30 feet away at the most. She's not going to move any closer than that.
Roll a intelligence for me. So when you're walking up on them, then you kind of like almost stop for a moment, starting to like see where they're going, and you're waiting for that. You're gonna notice that Velixis continues to go. Are you going to stop Velixis as Velixis like pushes past, kind of, and is like almost kind of, it appears, lost in this blindness, trying to listen for what is going on?
I'm not gonna stop her, but I'll get up and follow her.
Gotcha. So as you all are kind of like following along, you keep hearing these murmurs, and they're getting louder but no more intelligible. And you're going to get to the point, Fen, where you expect them to walk into this field that has been keeping everybody else away. Never happens. And then all of a sudden, Velixis is going to get about 30 feet away from these creatures. But there is a point where you are walking a little bit faster than they are, trying to close that distance. There is a point where just on a dot, the back three of them stop. And then a moment later, the other ones stop. And the murmur that was following them is still happening. But each of you is going to start to feel a weird fuzziness. I need you all to make wisdom saving throws, please. So you start to feel these presences in your head. They kind of walk back across this distance where again you feel like they would have come in contact with this field. Still nothing seems anything like visually that tells you they had to walk through it, that it's even there. From what you saw, they walked underneath the tower without any effort. And as they kind of move back towards you, they're going to slowly kind of spread and fan around you. All of these creatures are looking at you with these singular eyes. And the closer they get, the more this whisper that kind of hangs around them seems to get to be a loud noise in your head. And you're starting to recognize that this whisper is somehow invading your thoughts, and these creatures are somehow inside of your minds. It's clouding things, but you still have your thought processes. But these things feel like a headache, like you're thinking about so many different things at once. It feels, and again, to kind of fall into it, almost extremely manic to have this thing. It's like something else is trying to think for you, and you're just trying to focus on not allowing it to get deeper and deeper into your mind. But they don't seem to be attacking you. They are encircling you. They kind of form like a little bit of a crescent around you, never fully kind of encircling you. And you can kind of see after a while, each one of these six creatures seems to have found, it's technically there's seven of you, but one of you six. And they're just kind of staring at you individually. And as you're looking into this thing's big sheen of this large eyeball, a few feet from your face, you can feel its gaze inside of your head. And that's the fuzziness. And you aren't having internal dialogue kind of thoughts, but you can feel that it's asking the questions. And you almost have to fight when a dark, terrible thing from your past kind of comes up. You have to fight to keep the thought away. And you can feel that there's something alien about this thing, and it's that presence that's able to kind of latch on to some of your darkest moments. And moment by moment, more and more sure, being near these creatures is dangerous.
Gun is gonna recommend retreating again.
So if you all actually run away and retreat here, these things don't seem to fight your fleeing. You get further away from them and you can immediately feel this pressure rising off of your chest, this cloudiness and these voices and this manic thought process leaving your brain. And with a little bit of clarity, Things feel a little bit better. You had to run away like 50 or 60 feet to get away from them. They don't seem to have pursued. They almost like followed in those first few feet, but you can almost like remember like a point in this tether where you got far enough away that they kind of just weren't thinking about you anymore. And as you look back towards where they were, you can kind of see the last bit of where they seem to have like walked on. They seem to have walked into the spire.
When Gloria tells Vanessa this, Vanessa's kind of trying to ask Finn, do you? I'm assuming you don't want to try to follow them in.
I think you're kind of going to end up with two little problems here. You might have a little bit more ground to talk about in the future, following another group in. More or less, you guys are going to be recovering that from this as if you had like a migraine attacking you, where you guys had to run to ever gain the clarity to recognize that they've wandered away from you. So I think that's a lot more to say. Like, you can discuss that as a future plan. Like, if we see these again, maybe we can follow them. Or maybe, like, now that they're gone, let's see, the spire doesn't seem to be protected, and you could go check. But I feel like that might be a little closer to where you would initially be because, again, like, when you were close enough to them, it's hard to say that you were thinking for yourself. It was taking pretty much everything to keep that voice from simply controlling you. So while you guys are gaining a bit of clarity here after having experienced those cyclopses again, you can kind of recognize like you're right around the corner clinging to one of these like massive tusks that kind of like reaches out of the earth, and you can maybe around like that opposite kind of like northwestern side of the building you see like there's another entry into this building, around that corner. That's one of the other locations you all talked about perhaps checking out, but it is not one of the towers. Any thoughts? Are you going to continue on towards the tower? Do you want to check out another building here?
What looks would suggest that they move away from the tower for now and check out one of the other buildings. She's not sure what it is that she only knows what Gloria explained to her for the creatures, and at present she kind of wants to avoid them because she doesn't want to have her mind messed with at the moment. She's she feels like she's having enough of that, so she would suggest to Finn that they go check out one of the other buildings at the moment.
Is that like, let's go look at treasure, or do you have a building in mind?
Well, let's check this one that's we still haven't been inside, the one that's closest on the west side.
Yep, that's the one I was saying. It looks like it's like 8 tusks, and you guys are kind of right around that corner. So you can kind of head inside of that like back entrance and see like the central area of this building is just a massive kind of open space. Um, all around this room on the long walls, there are 4 stained glass windows. All of them seem to have like a bright light kind of shining from behind them. The little bit of recognition from the architecture, those windows are basically looking on to like those tusks rather than outside of the building. And from inside, it would be kind of very similar to the Grove, where stepping in, the conditions are a lot different. Like all of these windows has kind of a different glow that kind of like almost like tells you like about kind of the season sort of this magic. Necromancy has that kind of like dark glow of a early sunrise, or really maybe like a blood moon, kind of like in the deep of night, where it's like this thick red kind of glow coming through the stained glass, that kind of presents this whole big image. And all of these schools have this. And as you guys kind of walk around this like area, you can see this is just a massive hall, and there's this massive stained glass for each of the schools, each of the 8 schools of magic. So if you head towards kind of like it's really maybe you guys are coming in on the back of this, so you're actually kind of like getting this view from kind of behind what you'll notice as a lectern. And kind of like right next to you, there's just a large jeweled goblet that sits on top of this lectern that seems to overlook this whole big hall.
Once they get inside, the glare explains everything that they're seeing. Of course, Valixis would have Gloria hand her the goblet so she could go over it with her hands and check it, and have her explain the jewels that are on it. Um, and she would ask if there's anything else on the table aside from the goblet.
So when Valixis grabs the goblet from the lectern, because you're not going to be playing 2 characters here, you've got Galeria to get you through places. You still have to kind of like be ornery for yourself here. Valixis can be guided to the lectern, and you can grab the goblet. But as you kind of like get your hands on it, you're going to feel there's liquid inside of it. So you have to balance this thing, or you will spill.
See, I was actually just about to ask if there was a liquid inside. Um, she kind of sniffs it to see if she can tell what it is. She actually lets Finn know, hey, there's liquid in this, and she's not able to tell just from smelling it that if it's poison or not. And she asks him if he can explain the color or anything to her, if he thinks it may be poisoned or if it may just be a drink.
Smelling at, looking at, seems like water.
All right. Oh, it was just water. She actually, because she ain't had nothing to drink in a while. She goes to she goes to drink it, and then places the goblet in her bag.
Roll a d8. So when you drink from the goblet, you're going to feel that this thing that smells like water that the others have told you just looks like a clear liquid. It tastes like hot water. It's warm, feels good on your insides. You just kind of get a feeling that were you really in need of a bit of successful prowess in combat, you could probably focus your attention enough to be successful. And it just kind of like warms your heart a little bit. Roll a perception check. At disadvantage. Then, as Velixis puts this goblet into her bag, you're going to start to notice as Velixis starts to drip liquid. Almost as if the goblet like spilled inside, like Velixis didn't drink it all. You don't react at first. Continues to go. Maybe Velixis like punctured her water pouch, water moccasin, water bladder.
Again. Like, oi,
You guys,
Alexis,
What? What is it?
you seem to have sprung a leak.
I kind of I look at my bag, and I go to open it, and when I open it, I see the goblet's spilling out a little bit. I kind of pull the goblet back out. And
anything that you had in your bag will be wet with water right now. So if you had stuff in your backpack like books or paper, that's all wet currently. Um, when you reach into your bag is going to be filled with probably like a few inches of water, a little bit deeper already than the goblet that's like resting on its side. But especially like if you were to set it down on your lap, you're gonna feel like a big like slosh as you have like a soft like canvas bag that leaks water fast, but not fast enough to not be filling up with water as you speak. Probably a little bit more than your water bladder currently holds is like inside of your backpack.
so upon noticing this, Valexa would turn her bag upside down and put all her items on the table, but paper and everything to just dry. And then she picks up the goblet and she kind of on the floor in front of her. She kind of turns it on its side and pours it just to see how long it goes to pour. She does this for about a minute.
So as you like flip over your bag, you're certainly going to lose some things as this is all going to freeze pretty quickly as it kind of like gets to the actual ground here. Um, it might be better to say that it was actually freezing in your backpack. But regardless, as you're kind of playing around with what very quickly becomes an icy floor, Every single time you tilt that goblet, you're gonna hear water splashing against the ground. And you tilt it over, tilt it up, and it stops. Tilt it over, tilt it up, and it stops. But every time you tilt it over, it's pouring out water. Ben probably doesn't have to watch you for long to recognize that every time he pours water from that goblet, the goblet doesn't actually lack for any water. Oh, it's warm water, so it takes some time to freeze anyways. That's what I'm going for.
Upon realizing that, constantly hearing it pour out, she kind of asked, "Is there anything, Finn? Do you see anything around that we could use to cover this goblet? Because I kind of want to take it with, but this." And she would kind of like touch the desk where she places her items. Is very much an inconvenience if we can't cover this up. I mean, granted, it's nice to have an infinite source of water. Never know when this is going to come in handy, but if we can't carry it anywhere with us, this is very much a valuable find that is going to suck to have to leave behind.
There may be an answer to that, but I cannot come up with it.
So I'm tempted to say this might be an ideal stop for, or place for us to stop and wait for. Oh no, next week I don't think we have Justin in this one either.
Nah, you say he's gone for 2 weeks.
Roll an Arcana check for me, Velixis. You've heard the other two wizards discussing at least enough about these stained glass windows to start to interpret some of what these are images of. And you have a distinct feeling that the last one that they were discussing, True Strike, seems awfully familiar to the kind of feeling that you have about your success after having drank from the goblets. And you have a distinct feeling that you can cast that spell.
And you said it was True Strike?
True Strike. Would you attempt to cast it after having said feeling?
Yes.
So I'm assuming you don't have True Strike. The last time I looked at your character, you did not. But as you kind of like focus on this feeling inside of you, with a few kind of waves and traditional movements, you are able to cast this spell. You feel that same kind of like warming sensation, and it's kind of this idea like the next thing is kind of the feeling, but you know it's an attack that you do. Um, you'll be more than likely successful at. What it interprets to is when you cast True Strike, your next attack is at advantage. But you have this kind of like sensation like with this spell, you can be more assured of an attack that you need to be successful on. You kind of have a recognition like this is the school of the arcane. This is where children come to learn their first cantrip. This goblet is for teaching the cantrips.
So upon realizing this, Alexis would definitely take another sip to see if she learns anything further. And if not, she's going to sit the goblet down.
You take another sip. Feels like warm water.
Okay, so she sits the goblet down and she leaves it there for the next person. With her items pretty much just soaked, she kind of leaves them out to dry a little bit. Um, she asks, "Hey Finn, do you see any other items around that may be of value to us or to a wizard?"
Otherwise, this place is in ruins. There's very little of interest inside of this place besides the actual benches and otherwise kind of Demetrius now. The like shit of time kind of building up here.
All right, so she'll just after waiting a few minutes, and her items are dried out, she is gonna go ahead and put her items back in the bag. She basically knows she definitely needs a new bag probably now. Uh, where to next? And where should we go to next, Glenn? Any suggestions?
North and check out the first small dome.
What were you saying there, Velixis?
I was gonna say, all right, yeah, we can. I definitely agree to check that area out. Because we did pass by it and we didn't really get a chance to check it out until just now. So I'm kind of curious as to what's inside.
So as you enter inside of that dome, you can see that it is a oculus. The center of the dome is an actual circle, and it's open to the sky above. There is a stage kind of centered right beneath this oculus, and all around for about 320 degrees or so is just seating that goes from where you kind of walk in at the top all the way down to the stage, maybe about like 60 or so feet, like descended downstairs. This whole room shows signs of frost and kind of the rime that is kind of like the growth of timed ice. I feel like they use rime as another way of saying ice in this story because it is the Frost Maiden's rime. But this place is like covered in that frost and shows a lot of signs of being open to the elements. The stage connects in that little bit to have a area that is kind of sheltered from the view of all of where the audience would sit. And you could certainly walk back and down to this backstage area. But otherwise, this whole theater is just seems to be kind of like an abandoned sign of like the ice that has taken ages to set into this place.
So Alexis will definitely go to feel around the area a bit to see what she can notice about the area, with it being exposed as it is. Um, she checked. Let's see, what is this checking for? Uh, I had it. I had it a second ago. Hold on. Okay, she's checking, trying to check to see what kind of um entertainment dome this was. Like, what exactly did they use this dome for? If that's what she's trying to check for now, as she walks around and pretty much just filling on the walls and the area, the entirety of the dome.
So looking around the dome, like from this perspective, this place is pretty plain. Anybody could kind of describe it to you. There's not clues about what this place is outside of here, other than you basically have an auditorium that is focused towards that central stage. If you wanted to find out more about this dome, you pretty much have to go to the backstage area, the place that you can't see. Otherwise, if there's nothing that you can't see, then this place is completely empty and there's no clues.
All right, all right. Let's see. So she would try to make her way to the back area, feel her way to the back of the stage. And whenever she reaches the backstage, she is actually going to cast Detect Magic to check for anything back there that may be protruding any magical features.
Yeah, heading into the back, you're not going to. God, I think you see those auras. I don't think Detect Magic does anything for you if you're blind. The others can pretty much tell you that you are walking into what looks like a rundown kind of like theater troupe of this is like kind of a pretty plain building. You can see signs that there were probably like armoires and dressers and costumes, and like some stuff remains in tatters. But what you guys are looking at is like the ruins of a theater group. And pretty much, other than like maybe like one of the desks was made out of stone, this place is pretty much in ruins.
All right. Doesn't look like we're gonna find much anything here for right now. So she suggests that I suggest that we head over to the second dome that's near here.
Onward.
The next dome is probably twice to three times the footprint of the other one, meaning that inside space is much more than that, kind of in the scale of like three times the footprint is probably about five times, if not like 15 times the space. I think it's actually closer to like 15 times the space. There's a pizza calculation about that. Um, Always get the large pizza instead of two mediums. Um, but inside of this massive dome is a like large kind of like compartmentalized rooms, and you have a hall that seems to kind of like walk around the outer edge, and you can see these small rooms like on either side of the actual place as you like walk around. And inside, you can see on occasion some bones of some sort. Every once in a while, you're going to actually see. Oh, my bad. These are larger rooms. They're like full actual kind of settings, where you're seeing like a desert scene, like a jungle scene. Um, and I think there's actually creatures in a few of them. Uh, Nope, yep, definitely no creatures. I don't even know what it's getting at here. Eventually, when you get to the center of this place where you're walking around all of these different scenes, like different, um, climates around the world, you can kind of, you're gonna come to, I think it's an egg-shaped kind of stone plinth in the center, and this egg's just kind of like sitting up in the center, and see signs where maybe it's been smoothed over time from all the people touching it. But it seems like whatever is going on in this little circular center of that room, or of this massive dome, it seems to focus around this little stone egg.
But let's just go to inspect the stone egg, like, and pick it up from try to see if she can lift it from where it's at.
You cannot. Definitely like talking about like a 4 foot stone egg, maybe like 2 foot wide. It probably weighs approximately like 8 to 12 times Alexis's weight.
Okay.
When you go to examine it, will you make an Arcana check? So, as you kind of go over this big egg that you want to try to pick up, kind of like laying your hands on it and trying to actually like move it, it's not budging. It weighs way too much. It's definitely larger than like a description that you would have expected for how Galeria described it to you. And kind of going over it, you have a weird kind of like smell of kind of iron and almost like kind of thoughts of blood, like battle. You can feel on the stone almost little bits where you kind of like prick yourself against like these little spots before you can kind of like figure out that there's like 8 different points on this stone that seem to be prepared to kind of be bled on, or at least like a bloodletting. Like there is a, oh man, what were the old bloodletter kits called? It's a really crazy time when people would purposely like bleed themselves. And you can kind of like feel these little razor blades almost like ingrained into this stone. And like these 8 different points around this egg are all kind of prepared and kind of like going over this. I have a weird sensation that this stone is used for creating something through blood magic.
Oh. She would kind of just kind of like she would take her hands off of it and she would just kind of investigate other parts around it, other sections, because with it having been like that, she's not trying to accidentally cut herself on it or anything like that.
Gotcha. And what's Fen doing while Valixis continues to kind of investigate around this like bloodletting device?
I think he's just keeping watch and waiting for her to do something foolish.
Fen said like 0 fucks given. He just watched this girl lose 2 of her eyes, and you're just at this point like, what are you gonna do now?
Like I said,
Stop touching everything. This place
I
is
admire her
evil.
optimism. You know, the sort of nothing's gonna get me down.